Hey there. This is Nick. I am sitting here on the 14th of March, and I have to give a quick correction because one of the topics that we discussed on Friday, on the day of recording, has changed in the period of time of recording to releasing the episode. So one of the topics that we talk about is Dimitris Koufantinas and his hunger strike that has been going on for a little over 2 months. And as of today, the 14th of March, he has ended his hunger strike and gave the following statements as such. So he says, "The world judges those who took to the streets, but what is happening out there is much more important than the reason why it started." And he continues, "In the face of the force of these struggles, I declare from my part that with my heart and my mind, I am there among you all." So, just before you go into the episode, know that he has ended his hunger strike, and that while, the news that we are reporting on is not entirely up to date in the episode, still does not take away from the discussion I think that we have in the next 45 minutes that you'll be listening to. So thank you once again for all your support and enjoy the episode.
This is a question for you two. I guess this can be a cold open. Do Americans say shat?
Yeah,
as the past tense of shit.
I guess so.
It's like a joke. Like, I would never seriously say I shat. Well, no, wait. I shat my pants. Yeah, you could say that.
You can use shit. You can use shit as
shit
past
my
tense
pants.
itself.
Yeah.
I
You
shit
can
my
use shit
pants.
as
It
past
can be
tense,
present
yeah.
or past.
Yeah.
Shat sounds a little foreign.
Yeah. Don't did shat my pants, bruv.
I stopped saying
Shitted?
shat
Does anyone say shitted?
after the French did not join us in invading Iraq.
Yeah,
I
that was
shat
Rob's
out my
freedom
pants.
fries moment right there. Hey. Welcome to your weekly corner Späti. It's myself, Nick, joined with Kieran.
Yo.
And Rob.
Hola.
The only reason I said Kieran first is because his face appeared only in the screen on Skype. So I'm sorry, Rob. I would have done you first. But
no worries.
Yeah, we're coming at you, after also recording the CDU episode last night. So two maybe not so fun topics back to back, but, bear with us.
We're real heroes of the pandemic, just podcasting every night.
Yeah, and also apparently doing a stream, too, in the near future.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I forgot.
A couple of days.
Sorry, we'll talk about this after. I told someone I was free.
Yeah, so I've been wanting to do an episode on this for a minute, to say the least, and I think that now is the appropriate time, also because I finally sat my ass down and made an outline for us. We're talking about Greece, my dojo of a country that I know a lot about where I don't speak the language well. So, for those who do not know, there have been protests going on in Greece, I would say the majority of this year.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah. For two different things at least. Rob, you may have a third that will tie into it. But
yeah, I would say the street protests are definitely the two topics you have. So why don't you introduce those?
Yeah, so since January, I would say January, February, people have been taking to the streets in Greece concerning two major issues in the country. The first one being a law that has been currently passed by the New Democracy government of putting police back onto university campuses for the first time since 1973. And the second one being the hunger strike of Dimitris Koufantinas, sorry, I can't fucking read right now, who's been on a hunger strike since January 8th of this year. And they're weird, like they're kind of connected, kind of not connected in a like weird historical sense.
Yeah, they're both attacks on the left. You can call it that.
Yeah, very much so.
The third one I wanted to introduce before we start talking about those two, which is a little bit of a backdrop, is that since January of this year, what's been called Greeks Me Too has kicked off with an Olympian. Actually, I don't know what she did. She's famous in Greece. Sofia Bekateru gave an interview talking about how she was sexually harassed and assaulted when she was younger. And this has led to a wave of discussion in Greece, and I think most people are aware of Me Too. A lot of it is centering around the head of the director of the National Theatre, Dimitris Lignadis, who has now resigned as of a couple weeks ago. Horrible stuff. I mean, the article we were reading calls it a Epstein level pedophile, which doesn't seem like too much of an exaggeration when you consider the fact that he is tight with Mitsotakis. He was appointed director of the National Theatre last year when the New Democracy came into power, and all the richest people in the country are trying to defend him or be like, well, we don't really know what's going on, let's hold up. That's all going on in the background too. So There's a lot going on in Greece.
So I kind of want to just simply take this in twofold, because while these protests are, like we said, attacks on the left and weirdly related to two historical moments that are related to each other, which is the fall of the dictatorship in 1973. The police on campuses one has probably been one of the most apparent ones. I think that people outside of Greece are at least somewhat knowledgeable about that. Mitsotakis has had, as we've seen with the clearing out of leftist spaces in Exarchia, and with the establishment of new task forces, like within the Greek National Guard and whatnot, to take on quote unquote terrorism and other sort of things. One bill that he proposed, and that he was talking about actually for a bit last year, and then finally putting into law, was that he was creating a special task force to put the police back onto campuses in all of Greece. And for those who don't know, we're gonna travel back in time.
Yeah, I'm sure we've mentioned it on this program before, but it's always worth a reminder.
Yeah, but there's always good to have little refreshers. So the military dictatorship of Greece that ended in 1973 started because of the protests at the Polytechnical campus in Athens.
In Exarchia.
Yeah, in Exarchia actually too, yeah. And since the fall of the dictatorship, Greece has had a very strong tradition of keeping these spaces removed from police and military presence. And these spaces, universities obviously are we can just call them safe spaces for left-wing thought and left-wing activism within the country, and have a point historically, obviously, of that then it's, this, democratic right for students to then exist without this pressure. And then also the sense too that then the left has done a lot of their work from within universities. And if you've been to the Polytechnical campus in Athens, it's very much apparent that it's a left-wing space. Let's just say that, just spray painted everywhere with left-wing slogans, and that there's very much this kind of tradition that then has been alive and well in Greece amongst the left of preserving this. And so Mitsotakis then, seeing this, obviously, of something that he does not have control of, has been, slowly but surely trying to then utilize the power that he has, remember, without a coalition, to establish police presence back onto campus in the creation of said new task force that then is there. Right. So since February, there have been pretty much nonstop protests in front of the parliament in Greece in protest of this, before even the bill passed, actually. And then Mitsotakis going through with it regardless of the disapproval from parliamentary members who also protested in front of the parliament, and from, the left themselves, obviously, who he doesn't give a shit about.
This is the necessary reminder of the rule in Greece that the majority party gets plus 50 seats. Which Democratia
that little
is
fun
enjoying.
tidbit that was, So Greece, for those who don't know, you have the option of getting 50 more seats if you need to make a majority. which I will add was added because the United States was very upset with Greece unable to make majorities back in the early foundation of the government after the Civil War. So the U.S. suggested this amendment to their parliamentary system in order so that they could have a majority because the government kept failing, and in order for them to reap in Marshall Plan aid, which, surprise, surprise, did not develop Greece. Like, very much went into developing complete stupid things that were benefiting the upper echelon of Greek politics, like, shipping and shit like that we assume with that we associate with Greece currently. With why is the Greek economy so unstable? It's America's fault. I'm just going to leave it at that. But the newest waves of protests have started because of the person that I mentioned earlier, Dimitris Koufantinas, who was supposed to be moved to a lower so I have to back up.
Yeah. Back up a second here.
Yeah. So he was, for those who don't know, he was a member of the 17th of November organization. And
the leading member by the end, I believe, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. And he's called in the media as like the hitman for the 17th of November.
Which is a little disrespectful, I feel like, because, like, come on, he's like, I mean, like a lifelong.
One dude couldn't have done all this shit. Like
Hitman is like, we watched the Hitman is like, I'm just doing a job, and it's like, it was not a job. Like, even if you disagree with him, he was like a lifelong committed revolutionary. Like, Hitman is just a little slander, but I guess that's what they can say about you when you lose.
Yeah. So the 17th of November is they were an organization that propped up, they're actually named after the date of which the protests at the Polytechnical Institute start, and they were a Marxist organization that then was adamant about targeting particularly U.S. and Turkish installations in Greece that they felt were, problematic, to say the least. They also wanted to thwart Greece into, some sense of very much, I would say, on like a Maoist level, sort of like, revolution of like on the ground, like guerrilla warfare sort of stuff. And
we were going back and forth, like comparing them. How do they compare to like the RAF or these similar armed guerrilla groups in Western Europe? I guess they're similar. Where we can talk about a few of the differences. One is that they got some results. I mean, like, I'm sorry, I'm reading a lot of like, they got to put it crudely, they racked up a high score.
Yeah, I mean, when your first confirmed kill is the CIA chief in Athens, like
the CIA station chief, that's bragging rights for any kind of in the Deadpool bar.
Yeah, so from the 70s onwards until the 2000s, actually, the 17th of November carried out a series of 26 or 23 confirmed kills of targeted assassinations of certain peoples, whether it be particularly like U.S. Navy officials, people within shipping magnates, people who had association with the Turkish government. They I think in calling them a terror organization is a little bit too extreme and charged. Like they were doing targeted assassinations on people that they didn't like. So, and I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to use the T word, but nonetheless, they murdered a lot of people. If you agree with them or not, up to you. I'm not going to try to, convince you that they were cool or shitty or whatever. But he had been in prison on 11 life sentences for his, apparent work as a hitman.
Yeah, he got in 2002. There was somehow because the organization lasted for a long time. I mean, like you said,
it started.
Yeah, it started big in 1975. But it was still going. And in 2002, I think there was some mishap and some info was leaked, and they were arresting a lot of members of the group. And Koufontinas basically turned himself in. So it was like this dramatic story where he's like, yeah, here I am. I think because he was, I don't know the exact leadership organization of the group, but as some kind of leader taking responsibility for like, you know, turning himself in to like put the actions on him. And of course he said, I don't have his exact quote, but he's like, yeah, I regret nothing. I apologize for nothing. They were my, like, you know, I'm
king shit.
It's right here. I am not ashamed. I do not repent. I am proud to have taken part in this great struggle for the freedom of humankind. That was in court in 2007 when he was sentenced. But saying, I'm just like, yeah, to stop more arrests, basically. I don't know if more arrests happened.
Yeah.
That was his intention.
Yeah. So the thing that at least in his case was that he was this entire time in prison and kind of in this very, you know, typical sense of, you know, good behavior. He's also, you know, getting quite up there in age. He was organized to be moved to a lower security facility, which he and his lawyer had already gotten pretty much the approval for. That was going to happen come, I believe, early this year, if I'm not mistaken. The Mitsotakis government said fuck that and moved him to a high security facility in Greece, and he wishes to be returned back to the facility that he was at previously, which was just kind of like a mid-level prison, and has then gone on hunger strike since then. And as Rob mentioned earlier, that this was a thing that Mitsotakis had as his campaign promise, like one of his campaign promises going into the 2019 elections.
Yes, singled him out by name, saying we won't allow any. I mean, we've talked in past episodes about Mitsotakis and Nea Demokratia's kind of taking on of lawlessness, anarchism, and all these things as like a, you know, as a means to control spaces, whether it's universities or squats. Solidarity spaces, I guess you can say. And I feel like, I don't know the exact quote, but he did single him out directly, saying we won't allow any like loosening of the punishment or something against him.
Yeah,
and he kept his word.
Yeah, they doubled down and then took him to a high security facility, and then he, like I said, went into hunger strike, and then into the 54th day of his hunger strike. I'm pretty sure on the back of the protests of the anti-university police protests that have been happening, there were then people coming on the street showing support, you know, coming in solidarity out for him, you know, of his hunger strike. And the fear that then came into within the Greek conservatives, and I would say people just like general, like liberal kind of international community who has their eyes set on Greece, is very afraid currently right now of then what could come, because this group is historically quite problematic for them. Let's just say that.
Yeah. To clarify, the 54th day was Tuesday, the March 2nd.
Yeah.
So we've had the student protests basically ongoing throughout the year. This hunger strike started in early January, and it was, I don't know, the 54th day was when things really kicked off.
Yeah, and there's he within this time, as of recording this, he has been resuscitated once for kidney failure, which I believe happened 4 days ago or so. I believe on the 9th or 8th or something like that. Don't quote me on the date. And he's the government is still, you know, very much taking the side that they're making the right decision.
Another link to the RAF, and I know RAF prisoners, I mean, because several of them, at least one famously, Holger Mainz, died in hunger strike, but several of the living later members of the RAF did put out a press release where I first learned that Mitsotakis singled them out in solidarity with Koufontinas.
This has been, I think, more and more of a tactic that we've been seeing from like people within the left. Like, if people don't know, like look at like Group Yorum in Turkey, who you've had multiple members who have died in Turkish prisons because of their very explicit, Marxist beliefs and whatnot, and their ties to the Kurdish struggle, their ties to the like one of the Turkish Communist parties. This is something that then is also like, I mean, we talk about Europe in the sense of the EU, but like we do talk about Turkey as being a European country as well, and that is like two or three members of a band who were then, seen by the Turkish government as being too radical, have died in prison because of, the Erdogan regime, in solidarity with an international struggles and this and that, and I would argue that then Mitsotakis is very much becoming much, much more authoritarian than we've seen of more recent Greek leaders. I don't know. Like, Greece is always a weird thing because they kind of exist in this limbo of like kind of Europe, kind of not. And there is this acceptance that then like Mitsotakis could have like an Orban level authoritarian trend, and the majority of Europe would ignore it because they're doing well. They're not even doing well business-wise, well, economically horribly. So I do think that then like the like vulgar, explicit Marxist look at Europe in this sense is actually true in Greece's case.
Yeah, it's a weird contradiction of like Greece just has a lot of shit going on with it, and it's all to do with the Cold War, I guess, or a lot of it is, and that structure maintained because like they were kept separate from all their neighbors to the north, culturally and politically.
Yeah.
They were kept separate from their neighbor, the East, because, as you, Nick, have pointed out before in the podcast, that the communists in Turkey and the communists in Greece actually got on swimmingly. And we can't have that. So we install these, like, nationalist governments that bring up anti-Turk, anti-Greek fervor. So, like, it's just this weird, isolated, like, they can kind of pretend they're like Italy, I guess. But,
which,
like,
I'm proof of that, King.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. You are a product of the Cold War, but, like, like, this is the weird thing of just, like, oh, yeah, Greece is this, like, sick man of Europe, and then we let Bulgaria into the EU, and you're like, oh, wait, actually, this is, in the context, geographically, this all makes way more sense if you look at their neighbors.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And just like to get right back on topic for a second, and then we can kind of go back to the sense of how this affects the left, is that so these protests, obviously, as you can imagine, erupted violently, and a lot of videos have been showing that the police have been beaten by the protesters. And I would like to then add a small caveat that this is in retaliation for the police taking protesters and just brutally beating the shit out of them.
Oh, yeah.
So there was video that surfaced at the beginning of this week of the police doing that. That got kind of ignored. I think I saw like Redfish picked it up and like put it into like English media or the English, language, sphere of things. And to be very fair, they've been doing very good video journalism on this. So if you do want more on the ground stuff, like check out Redfish's Instagram. They're the only one that I've been finding in English who's been very much on the ground with this stuff. But then a bunch of Greek conservative people on Twitter, Instagram, all this, were then retweeting the fact that it looked like 200 Greek anarchists just stormed police on their motorcycles and just ripped 3 officers off their bikes and just beat the absolute shit out of them. Were like throwing explosives at them, which, I don't like. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't have any sympathy for. Like we've covered how Greek police are on the show multiple times. They're like not like neo-Nazi views that are very much intertwined there. I mean, we talked earlier in the sense on an episode where we had Pavlos Goufos on talking about Golden Dawn and how the police, like, you can literally look about how like the police vote for
every
Golden Dawn.
Yeah, exactly. That had a police station and it voted Golden Dawn.
Yeah. So I'm not going to give any sympathy for them. I can understand the frustration coming on the ground of, the Greek leftists taking out their very, understandable rage and anger out on, the police. ACAB, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah, you can, I guess you do take our word for it, but if you don't want to, there are plenty of videos on Twitter from journalists showing just Greek police going, like from today. I mean, like from 2 hours ago, just going ham.
Like that's the only place I've been seeing this stuff.
Yeah, when I was in Greece, one time, like taking part in like a solidarity demonstration for the murder of Killa P. Oh my God, the police really, really wanted to, just lay out on you and shoot tear gas at the very first opportunity that they had when they cornered everyone into a very small alley. They're like, don't get me wrong, police suck everywhere. Police in Greece are on a much different level of just being very, very, very militaristic and fascist. So, but these videos that have been very selectively picked by certain people who are then kind of looking at them, this stuff is then kind of being like, oh, look at these, monsters. Look at how like they need to be dealt with, this and that and that. And you can see this a lot within the diaspora community, especially. So a lot of like Australian and American Greeks kind of sharing these videos being like, what's going on with my, in quotes, country, So, and that very much gives at least in my opinion, a very one-sided view of that. I would say the majority of violence is being started by the police. One, coming from firsthand experience, two, from coming to the sense of just like what Rob said, every hour you can find videos of just police brutality coming out of Greece with these, with not even just the protests, showing solidarity with Koufantinas, but also in the sense of the police brutality that then has come with the university strikes, university protests that have been happening. So, yeah. That's and there have been just like I said earlier, just like a heightened sense of fear, I would say, amongst like Greek liberals of like, what's this violence gonna trigger, this and that, because of what this organization represents for the country historically.
I mean, it seems like they're just gonna let him die, right? Like. I guess they're hoping for that at this point, right? Like, wouldn't New Democracy? I mean, because like, that's like, I don't know, it's keeping a campaign promise, right?
Yeah, I think so, right? With all this protests and violence that then's been happening within the last few months, I think that we kind of need to just kind of address it as what it is. And we mentioned this at the beginning of the show, is that like there's been a very explicit take from Mitsotakis of, clamping down on the left in Greece. And you can take this, I don't know how you could even like disagree with it, to be very honest, like unless you're just a liberal being like, he's clamping down on terrorism. It's like, no, like, the evictions in Exarchia, putting the police back there, the current ruling for campuses having police back on it, like very explicitly, closing in on left-wing spaces. Not even to mention the amount of bizarre lawsuits that have been coming up against refugees and NGOs that help refugees, which we will do a full episode on that in a later day, because someone I know wants to come on and talk about that. So, and I think that that's like, at the end of the day, something we always kind of have to keep in mind is that like, while these protests are like obviously, in solidarity, and that the reaction from the government is brutal, this didn't just pop up out of nowhere, like this has been very much something that then Mitsotakis has been kind of hammering on the national level his entire presidency since 2019. And as Rob said, he campaigned on some of this shit. Yeah. And
a lot of the to go back to the university protest quickly, I mean, I do feel like it's a certain myopia, of which the liberals are of which is characteristic of the liberals, to say like, because it's like, they're selling cigarettes and like knockoff sneakers on campus, and the police can't do anything, and it's like, really? That's like, so we're gonna send in the military.
That's your fucking thing that you're going after. Yeah, it's like, my son came home with a pair of fake Dior Jordans. All right, how do you think I feel?
My son came home with a pair of Reeboks, and heads must roll.
And the other examples given are like, class can't function because, students are like occupying buildings too often. And like,
Class can't function because the professors at the front of the lecture hall be like, dude, are those Reeboks? Are you wearing Reeboks right now?
and it's just like, to treat those as like, discrete problems of like, how do we optimize learning? It's like just so, especially, I mean, anywhere,
gotta
but
get
particularly
the FDP into Greece now. Come on, let's just be honest here.
But to say that anywhere is absurd, but particularly in Greece with its political history, and in Greece of like under Neo Demokratia's Greece with like a renewed fight against the left. It's just like, what do people expect?
Yeah, I don't know. The thing that's actually pretty crazy about, like, because you mentioned the sense of classes being unruly. We talked about this earlier in the show at the beginning of, like, midway during Corona, that then schools in, I believe, Thessaloniki, like, staged strikes because they didn't want to go back to school with Corona happening. So they closed a bunch of schools in Greece, starting with these, student strikes, which is sick. Like, that's what you get when you don't have cops on campus, I guess, is, organized protest against a country unable to react to coronavirus because he's too busy taking hikes in the mountains and taking photos with Tom Hanks. Yeah.
I love that
I'm going to bring that up. I'm going to bring up that Tom Hanks is Greek, of course.
I mean, my only comment is very not related to that, but just like, if you're a liberal complaining about education, just do what a normal Western country does, which, invent like Treehouse or Skillshare.com or something like daft like that. Like, put it all online. Like, this is Greece showing their hand that like we're not quite a Western country because our solution to a very liberal concern is police brutality.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you there. In the terms of what Rob wants to talk about, though, of the 17th of November, the thing that I will say is very interesting, just on a little side caveat of that, and maybe I agree with this statement, I don't know, is that one of the members of Syriza, so a party that is not radical really in any way whatsoever, as we all know, was quoted with much disappointment from international liberal media that saying that no one was terrorized by the 17th of November, and I wouldn't 100% disagree with that statement, like in the sense of how I guess we have to this comes under an entire conversation, and then what is this version of terrorism between in the pre 9/11 world, left-wing terrorism, or if we're going to call it left-wing terrorism, whatever. But, groups like the RAF or ETA or, 17th of November did their attacks on very specific targets, maybe at most a couple times a year, So it is even in the sense of in the sense that he feels no remorse for what he did. It's yeah, well, whatever. I think that there is, from that alone, a general sympathy within people who aren't of this establishment, that don't see them as then this big scary terror organization, because to be very fair, if you're a normal person in Greece, you're not a target. It's not how we view terrorism now. It's I'm going to walk on the street and I could die from, terrorist attack that could, potentially happen because I've seen too many episodes of 24 or some shit like that, And I think that then, realistically speaking, of them just viewing, using this example as in an anti-terror sort of thing is just kind of obviously stupid and for obvious political gains. And yeah, it is interesting of seeing that then how there's also been a lot of international support within Europe from people within the left then coming in and showing solidarity with him. Yeah, I think that this falls also just into a complete different historical block as well, right? I mean, Rob, significantly more about this stuff than I do, but
well, just with terror, it's twofold. One, I mean, first of all, if you believe certain conspiracies, the rise and prominence of like what we now know as terror attacks is like at least has the positive side effect of having you, like you random civilian, confuse politically directed acts of, what to call them, terrorism versus indiscriminate terrorism writ large, which has had connections to intelligence agencies in the past. I'll just leave it at that. And I mean, I think it's interesting. I was reading a bit about the ruling in 2007 and other members of or even guerrilla members in underground groups in Greece, and there's a concerted effort. This is not limited to just Greece, but limited to basically every country in Europe and the United States, that it wasn't political somehow, that they were, and you can disagree, or you can even think that they had, I don't know, a shaky understanding of Marxism, Leninism. I'm going to let you hash out that debate. But to just say they were just, I don't know, punks going wild is that is a concerted effort to basically, to erase the past, right?
Yeah.
And to erase your history.
Yeah, I think that too, that maybe I said this off air, if I'm not mistaken. The thing I think is really interesting in the example of Greece and in the example of the 17th of November organization specifically is that I would argue that Greece has never really been a free democratic country since its establishment, even after British rule, but after the Civil War, after its military dictatorship. And they're definitely Greece definitely for a lot of, things within the Cold War were the proving grounds for a lot of things that then ended up in other parts of the world and vice versa, that they came back also into Greece with how then the CIA and the United States kind of had their thumb on this country. So from strictly a Marxist perspective, if you are a, radical organization who then will take up violence, I think that that's legitimate in this sense. Maybe not not saying that the violence is legitimate. I'm not going to be quoted on the show saying that, but I think it's legitimate to have your understanding of being that then you don't see that then the country that you live in as being then this, bastion of liberal, at least the basis of a bastion of liberal democracy, and that Greece was always just kind of this weird plan of things have to keep chugging along. And we will very much keep the left under our thumb, which is just historically true. The Communist Party was banned. Communist Party came back into power, or not back into power, came back into existence. Very little support. Greece has had one remotely left-wing government in form of Syriza, who then immediately became just sterilized internally and externally. How even though Syriza is probably a neoliberal institution now, the international press that just continuously said that these are these radical socialists and that Greece has to exist within the sense of a liberal fantasy of this preservation of this idea. And I think a lot of it actually has to do with the sense that then Greece being a Western democratic thing is just a front because Greece is historically the birthplace of democracy as well, And because that's the thing is that Greek culture then during in the post-Civil War period was completely devoid of anything that wasn't just classics and bullshit. Every artist moved to France and whatnot, and the conservative governments of Greece up until the military dictatorship had this very dumb understanding of what Greece was as a nation. It was very this ethnic, homogenous sort of thing that then obviously the Turks had no influence here, this and that, no. And it is
Byzantium. What's that?
Yeah. And I think it's just a continuation of this project. So I can at least understand from that perspective of how looking at that, regardless of if the actions themselves were then justified or not, that it is at least seeing it that Greece is a project benefiting the U.S. And we see it also then after the financial crisis as well, benefiting then, Germany and so on and so on and so forth. Greece is a financial playground at the moment.
Yeah. I have two things to say about that, which is like I don't think I ever really got around to this point when we did the Macedonia episode, but we did kind of talk about like Macedonia's antiquization of just like trying to connect their modern nation with this like culture from antiquity, and we kind of like laugh at that, but to the same extent, like Nick said, this is kind of what Greece did under the dictatorship. It's just they were kind of allowed to do that, and we weren't allowed to poke fun and say, how can you have a connection to a society that is more than like 4,000 years old? That is ridiculous. That's a ridiculous idea. And then like ignore everything that happened in between, to your detriment, like losing all your artists and writers to other countries that can embrace modernity.
Yeah.
Like
to be fair, that's also why we pretend France is a democracy to protect the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like there's like farcical things that happened in like modern Greek state building of like encountering islands in the Aegean Sea where people self-identified as Romans. Like there's like it's insane shit. Like Greek nation building was insane. But to the second point, like if we're turning Greece into the benefit of all European countries, then I'll go back to my original point that I've made a long time ago, but I will insist upon. We need to turn Greece into Europe's Florida. Zero income tax, build a Universal Park Studios somewhere on Crete. Let's go.
I'm down for that, yeah.
Much like the original settling of Florida, it would be a semi-settler project. The one thing
we'll have like a population of like rich Syrians who like complain about like Rojava being evil.
I have long said that the white Syrians and Lebanese in the U.S. were the original Cubans. What's funny is that like you have no democratic input as to whether you live in a democracy or not, right? So like the country can be like, all right, we're democracy now, and like if you disagree, there's nothing you can do, right? Because it's like you're trapped like in the very confines of the institutions and the definition. I mean, I think you mentioned this during the episode, Nick, about how the Greek Communist Party, boycotted elections for this very reason, because it's like, this is not a legitimate institution. And so if you're not working with a legitimate institution, what are your options? You don't really have much.
Yeah,
in the system.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's a tactic that you see just internationally, right? Just that continues on of like, well, this isn't legitimate, so we won't take part. And then the international community will then look at it and be like, well, see, like they don't have support because they're not taking part in the electoral process. Like,
and
that's
I want to say that even if it seems sillier or less pertinent than Greece, because I do think Greece is a more extreme example, this was the same logic of the RAF in West Germany. Like they thought we are created by the US and the Allies for a certain purpose, and we can't do anything. And that might sound silly, but the passage of the emergency laws in 1968, which gave the West German government, the ability to basically suspend the rule of law, that the final end of the post-war occupation, and I mean there are a bunch of American troops in Germany today, so like, yeah, I don't know the exact legal terms, but the conditional end of the post-World War II occupation of West Germany, that was conditional on the emergency laws passing. And this was the exact argument that West German leftists gave, which is like, so the peaceful transfer of power can only occur if you still have like a fail-safe switch. And this is what they pointed out when, making their argument for a guerrilla organization. And so you do have a bit of continuity, even though I do think the situation in Greece was more dire across all of Europe. And like, that's also like another thing of like looking at Greece. I think it's very valuable. I think we lose this a little bit today and like, you're a more privileged situation. Like it should be valuable to look at Greece and see like, okay, well, our history or the current situation or repression of the left isn't as bad as Greece, but there are connections here. Like, it was a degree less, or maybe several degrees less, but like of the same kind. And I mean, that's a very valuable means of international understanding and solidarity that obviously the powers that be do not want you to engage in.
Yeah. I would say then on that note, we can, close this episode out then. I mean, I know it's quite a short one, but it's also a pretty heavy topic that is much more serious than what we do. Is there, I know that Kieran has something he wants to plug. So.
No, this is coming out after that.
Oh, yeah, true. Never mind then. So
we want to do a St. Patrick's Day stream. Can we plug that?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. We'll do that. We're going to stream more often. So subscribe to the Twitch channel, twitch.tv.
I found a lot of videos last night.
I found none. I was researching all this, so I'm sorry.
No, you did a great job. Rob kept sending me video links throughout the night. That like when I woke up this morning to like 47 new messages from Rob. I was like, I'm just gonna give you editing rights to the playlist. Guys.
I don't want to spoil it, but if you watch the stream, you will see. A very fun activity is to just type into YouTube Harlem Shake in the most random tiny city in Europe you can think of, and you will find a video with 200 views from 2013 of often 5 to 20 people, often overwhelmingly men, doing the Harlem Shake.
Dudes rock.
Well, yeah. I'm glad that then we can end this on a lighter note of then Rob looking up the Harlem Shake. I guess on that note, we will see you guys in all midweek for the bonus, or I guess Friday or midweek. I don't know. Probably going to do an update on Baden-Württemberg as well after the elections and Rheinland-Pfalz. And solidarity forever. And we'll see you guys, I guess, then for the regular scheduled episode on Monday then, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.
See ya.